Hi, my name is John Brink. Thank you for joining us today. You're watching a history of the BC forest industry. Thank you for watching today's session of with this very special guest is Jim Good of Goodsir Nature Park. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you very much, John.
So, tell me a little bit about your background. Are you from the area or from BC?
I'm not originally from Prince George, although I've lived here most of my life.
So where were you born?
I was born in Vancouver, and I was raised in Vancouver, and then we moved to Burnaby when I was 11 years old.
Right. And then when did you first became aware of the North and the Prince George region in particular?
My parents came up here, it was in 1967, on a brief camping trip, and we came to Prince George and we went as far as Summit Lake, and I saw the area for the very first time going through the caribou, and I was fascinated. I loved the countryside, and I remember saying, one of these days I want to move here and live.
What did you like about it?
Well, that was in the fall. It was all the yellow leaves and that, the blue sky, and the small towns, and I was never one for big city life,
right?
But just seeing a different pace, and and it being close to nature too along the way.
Yeah, and something about you that somehow you were always very interested in the plants and in the forest, right from the time you were small,
Very
right?
small, yes.
So what made that all happen? How did that start?
Well, it all started, I credit Cultus Lake east of Vancouver as the birthplace for my love for nature and music too. And my parents used to go up there every year. It was a lot different then than what it is today. And I used to wander off. I was fascinated by wildflowers and trees in the area that you don't find. We lived on Venable Street in Vancouver, and this was a completely different surrounding for me, and I just fell in love with what I saw.
But you were still so young, you know, you were less than 10 years old, and already you were then collecting?
I was already, I started collecting my very first plant samples at Cultus Lake, and I would, later my mom gave me a book, Native Trees of Canada, and it furthered me along, and I just loved doing it.
And you would pick the flowers and the trees, and you would put them in your book and then kind of press them?
Press them, and then I'd take them, bring them home, press them on paper with, I just used regular Scotch tape at the time.
Right. And you still have
I still have some of those in the original museum, and I labeled everything, and in later years I took pictures too.
Right. And then you have this other love that you developed in your life, and that relates to vinyl.
Yes,
and for the listeners, especially the younger listeners, those are really the records that used to be all vinyl.
Yes.
And you developed a love for that, and now today you have a museum. Especially for that purpose. Where did it all come from?
It actually originated, again, at Cultus Lake. My dad was a little bit of a music buff. He loved his music, and he tuned in CFUN, Vancouver. That was his favorite radio station back then. And he'd have his car doors open. He'd have the music on, his radio on.
Both of them, doors open.
Both doors open. It wasn't blaring loud like you would find today.
Yeah.
But it was just enough volume to hear the songs.
Yeah.
And I started listening to the songs and found I could carry a tune in the back of my head as a little boy, 6, 7 years old. If I heard it a day later, a week later, and if I heard it a year later, I remember where and when I heard it for the very first time.
Amazing. And that became a big part of your life.
Yes, yeah.
And so then when did you move north? You know, so you went there when you were a young boy, and you kind of decided, yeah, this is maybe where I want to live. So when did you really move here?
It was August of 1973, and I basically came here to get away from big city life.
Right.
But I've been all over the country a few years earlier, and I had other places. Maybe I might want to move to one of those places someday. But when I saw the Prince George and the surrounding area, unspoiled lakes and backcountry and rolling hills, and I fell in love with that, and I knew this was for me.
So much through nature, right?
So and being very, very close to nature.
And that was in 1983?
1973.
1973
Yeah.
when you came in. So what were you doing then? And but were you working or?
I was working. At SFU Burnaby. I was there for 4 years. And I came to Prince George a few weeks ahead of time to see if I could find a job, and I was able to find a job with the school board, School District 57. And I explained my situation, and the superintendent, he said, well, we'll put your job on hold, and we made an agreement as to when I'd be back, and I kept the agreement, and I showed up, and I got laid off at the end, but at least I was able to move here to stabilize me.
As a custodian?
As a custodian, yeah.
And you did that for many, many years, right?
I've worked as a custodian all my working life.
All your working life.
Mm-hmm.
And so today, and I know you don't mind me saying that, you are 70 years old.
I'm 70 now.
And then at some point you bought a house here, and then you sold the house and you acquired what now today is the Goodzer Nature Park.
Yes, that's correct, yes.
So when was that?
That was 1987. I had a house for 12 years.
Yeah.
When I first came here, I lived in the back of my truck.
Yeah.
No rent for me. And I've never paid rent in my life. I
Yeah.
braved the elements. I was tough in the right way, and it paid off.
And it was cold then,
It was
30 below, 40 below?
30 and 40 below, living in the back of my truck.
Yeah.
I had a place where I parked for electricity,
Right.
mail delivery and that.
Yeah.
But apart from that, and then I bought the land. It was raw land, 1987, and I homesteaded. That was another part.
It was 160 acres.
160 acres,
Still is
yeah.
today, right?
Yeah.
But there were conditions.
Yeah.
And what were the conditions?
The biggest concern of the former owner, because I made a down payment, I could not log the land or cut any of the trees. That was his security. But little did he know that went right down my alley, because I had planned.
You had no intent to do that to start with.
Because you don't cut trees in a park.
No.
And to develop a park too.
Yeah. But it's made you somewhat of an anomaly, because a lot of people bought land and then logged it.
Yes.
And then resold it. But that certainly wasn't your objective.
It was to keep the park intact, to keep all the original trees intact.
So now you had, what year was that, 1973?
That was 1987.
1987. Now you had the land.
Yeah.
Now you had a plan.
Mm-hmm.
What was the plan?
From an idea I had in my early teens to turn it into a nature park, and I kept to my goal, and I did just that in a few years to follow.
And the nature park means to show the trees and the plants that grow right across Canada.
All over the country.
From every region
Yeah.
and every corner.
Coast to coast to coast, and south to Point Pelee.
And you started accumulating those, even the little small ones,
Yeah.
already 30 years ago. You planted them with the whole idea of developing walkways and see them grow.
And trails and that, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And I nurtured them. Some of them were so small they get lost in the grass, but I knew exactly where they were.
Yeah.
And I checked them, and I just basically let nature run its course. No fertilizers or anything like that.
No.
And I had about an overall 80% success rate with transplants.
Wow. And so today, if we look at it, you got all the pathways and then all the different trees and plants, and you have signs next to it, that explain where they are from, and
Yes.
then you tell the tour, once you give the tours, all about
The guided tours.
the guided tours. And so that is the park. Now the other thing that I was wondering is it is called Goodzer Nature Park. Why? Where does Goodzer come from?
Okay, that goes back to my family history on my father's side. My grandfather was the road superintendent for the CPR in the Golden area, Golden, BC. This was in and around the 1890s. And he was well respected, well liked by everybody that knew him. This is based on the stories my dad used to tell me when I was little. And they named an mountain peak in his honor after his nickname. How he got his nickname, I can't remember.
And the nickname was, his last
Goodzer.
name was Good,
Good.
but they called him Goodzer.
Goodzer, yes. So they named the mountain in honor of his nickname, and it became known as Mount Goodzer.
And Mount Goodzer is in the southeastern part in the Rockies of the province of British Columbia, and it's probably the fifth highest peak in the Rockies.
It's the fifth highest mountain peak in Canada.
In Canada?
It's just short of 12,000 feet, I believe.
Wow.
And it's located in Yoho National Park, and below, in the valley below it is the Kicking Horse River, I believe.
So you more or less created the park in his honor.
And it was a promise I made to my dad when I was 14.
Yeah, when you were 14.
Yeah.
So today, if we look at Goodser Nature Park, 160 acres, 20 minutes, say half an hour, north of Prince George, just across the river, the Salmon River, and then turn to the left.
Yeah, you start up the hill and it's the first left, and I have a highway sign.
Yeah, and it's right as you climb. It's a little bit not overly obvious, but that's where it is. But it has another thing to it as well. There is what we call a vinyl museum. That again is the records, all the way going back to the 1950s.
Yes, yeah. The vinyl museum is a go back in time theme. I've always been fascinated in time travel, but of course time travel, everybody knows, is not real. But I advertise time travel back to the golden years of the vinyl era. See many of the artists and groups that became famous for their music, and relive the days. And I do demonstrations how DJs used to play records on the air long before the age of computers. It was the analog way. And I have vintage stereos. I give demonstrations of how they work. And people are fascinated by this.
And see, that's another unique part about you and Goodser Nature Park, is because the Vinyl Museum brings us back in time. Because for the public that is listening, you know, that Jim sitting here in the interview has another personality to him, which is one of the most unbelievable DJs that I've ever heard. He knows everything about the vinyl records that he plays in terms of who's playing what instruments. It is absolutely, totally unbelievable and a must-see.
I know them just about, between the two hobbies, I think I know my plant life just a little bit better, but only by a thin margin.
And so then we move to another part of the museum, and we see the plant museum, another building that has the plant. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, I built that up over the years. That was the first of the two museums. I believe I introduced the first display. I have several showcase displays, and I brought back some granite rock and some lichens and that from the Northwest Territories in Holiday in 1999 out in the Yellowknife area. And that's what really started the first museum. And then over the years, I added to it. I had samples I collected back in my early years. They were all stored away, and I put them all on display, as well as at the time creating new displays and into the future as well. And I run out of room. I've even got them on the ceiling. I virtually run out of room in this museum.
So just again for the public, the museum or the Goodser Nature Park is open 12 months of the
Yes,
year.
it is now, yes.
And in particular in the spring and in the summer, it is a must, absolutely must see and must walk the tour and understand the plants and the forest related pieces that you have there.
Right, yeah. And the park entrance is, the park entry fee is by donation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so and again, you know, and I've done this a couple of times now, and we've been a partner with you, trying to bring this to everybody's attention. You know, so especially having a park like this that shows the forest and the plants from across Canada is a treasure that is unique to Prince George in the area and should be preserved for the long term.
Yes.
You know.
I know that some of the trees I planted, if they survive, whether it be man-made elements or natural elements of nature, some of these trees could live hundreds of years, well into the future. I've been told some species of native Canadian trees have never been grown in this part of the country before. Some do well, some do frostbite, but they're all, to some degree or another, are living in the park.
Yeah, and which makes it so unique, right? I read an article not long ago, you know, we'll probably post it on our website and on Facebook, is that in Australia, with all the fires that they had, is that they are actively pursuing now how can they preserve the history of all the nature with so many of the fires there. And obviously we have similar issues, and we are so fortunate to have Goodzer Nature Park. And we want to see more happening, bring it to the attention of the college, the universities, and the Ministry of Forest, and say this is a treasure that we must preserve and must build on.
Okay.
And if you now look in the future, Jim, how do you see it going forward? You know, in terms of the nature park, what else do you want to do with it to prepare it for the long term?
Finding someone that will take my place and maintain it, just as I have. I got it started. I started it from scratch, totally from scratch. I still remember pushing the lawnmower through the bush to build those first trails. That was a chore in itself. But just knowing that it will be protected for many, many years to come. I had an acknowledgement. Goodzer celebrated its 30th anniversary last year.
On the 19th?
It was the 21st of June.
June last year, right?
Last year was 30.
And there was an event held at Goodson Nature Park. A lot of people turned out.
Yes, yeah.
Right? And you had the opportunity to do a presentation that you did 30 years ago at exactly the same date at exactly the same location.
That was the Declaration of Goodzer. I remember I invited two people, and I told them, I explained what it was for, and I had two other people show up at the same time, and they became part of it. I read a declaration, the Declaration of Goodzer, announcing it as a park for all of Canada to see, and it would be a park of the future, a place to come and learn about forestry and plant life, not just locally, but all over the country.
And that was 30 years ago.
And I reread that original declaration in 2019 in the exact same spot, witnessed by, there must have been 60, 70 people there.
Yeah, there
word
were.
for word. And I tried to time it almost to the minute too.
Yeah, yeah.
Of that evening.
Yeah, and it was an absolutely unbelievable event. You know, so now what you do is, you know, you get school children coming down.
School classes, yes.
School classes coming down, and then more and more people are visiting the park, and you know, and that's why we do this show as well, to make sure that people get to know Goodzer Nature Park.
Yes.
And so and the other thing that I take the liberty of saying that, that if people visit the park, although it is by donation, I urge people for adults, not for the old or the young, but at least make a donation of about $10 to maintain the park, because up to now, what you have done, you mentioned it to me when we talked a little bit early, it has been a real struggle for you.
It has very much
always,
been.
right? Right from the beginning.
Well, this is my life's work.
Yeah, but it has been always in the form, and it was you that said it, of poverty, right? Of barely getting by.
Yes.
So and what you have accomplished in that is just amazing. But the park is still growing, and we were talking about some of the things that you have to hope to get this year is a number of wheelbarrows, a brush saw, a small chainsaw, and all of that. The donations help to do that. Right?
It helps. And the other thing is the volunteers. I've had some serious health issues the last couple of years, and I can't by myself maintain the park like I used to.
You had open heart surgery.
Quadruple bypass.
And you died nearly twice, right?
Yes, and I may have to go back for another operation.
Yeah.
I don't know yet.
Yeah. And you're feeling just a little bit better, but for a while you were very, very weak,
I was
right?
very, very weak, yes.
And so for this year, again, you're looking for some additional volunteers?
Yes, I need volunteers to help, just to maintain the trails, grooming the trails, shouldering, which would be later in the season, and firewood detail as well. And so there's a lot of upkeep.
So if people want to volunteer, how do they go about that?
Well, I do not own a computer. They can't get a hold of me online, but my home phone number, and there's an answering machine, and I always return the call.
Okay, you want to give that number?
It's 1-250-971-2337, and it's a Salmon Valley number.
It's a Salmon, and that's why it is one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe say it once more. 1-250. Yeah.
971.
971.
2337.
2337.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason that I brought up, you're very, your last name is Good, and we have been friends for quite a while. When I first, I just want to mention that to the people that are watching. The first time that I met you, you came to my mill and the front desk, and you were asking for short pieces to buy and get a discount. So I was fairly busy, and I said, well, I have to come back in the afternoon. You came back in the afternoon, and I came down and talked to you. And as soon as I started talking to you, I thought, oh my goodness. So I said, whatever amount of wood you want, we will give it to you, and we have been quite involved with you ever since,
Yeah.
So, but sometimes if I look at you, your name is Jam Good, but sometimes you're too good, and too generous, and I believe it is important, although it is by donation. I believe that the people that go and visit and enjoy it should make a reasonable donation, and I recommend $10, not for the very old or the young, but for people that the adults, and to maintain the park, because it has always been a challenge.
It's always been, and it's even more of a challenge because of my health issues now. Yeah.
And again, as you said, you may have to get another operation, and if you now kind of look forward and you see all the things, and I discussed with you the article that we kind of looked at in Australia, where because of all the fires, they want to inventory all the plants and trees they have there, and create a bank of seeds, so they don't lose the natural history of that.
Right, yeah.
Goodser Nature Park is already an example of that. And I saw an article on that in Thai. We'll post it on our website, the Goodser Nature Park is an addition to the other teaching areas here on the forest industry, and all very much part of a changing industry and better understanding of the forest
Right, yeah,
as
exactly.
we, not only where it is, where it was, but also where we are going in the future. You agree with that too, right?
Yes, yeah. I do know Goodzer has been recognized nationally leading up to the 30th anniversary. And I had an acknowledgement from the Prime Minister wishing me good luck and all that.
I saw that.
He was originally invited, but he couldn't make it.
Well, he was in Washington, because
Yeah.
I saw the email of that because he was seriously considering coming.
Yeah,
Right?
I know. So he knows what Goodzer is. And I had an award letter, you would remember this, from
Yeah.
Mayor Lynn Hall
Yeah.
last September.
Yeah, and now what we want to get the Premier of the province, John Oregon, down
Oregon.
here, and maybe Doug McDonaldson, the Minister of Forest,
Yes.
down here as well. So we will make sure that they become knowledgeable about it,
Okay.
because it is a must-see.
Yes, it
right?
is. It's also been recognized as the first of its kind in Canada, unofficially to my knowledge, but there's nowhere else in Canada you can go and see something like this. And people are blown away when they find out that this is the work of one solitary person.
Yeah.
My life's work, and no help or support, but I've always said, never give up on your dreams and goals.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Jim, it was my pleasure
Okay.
to see you. Thank you. Thank you for watching the show. And again, Jim Good, you must see the Goodser Nature Park. If you do go, which you must do, be generous when you're there. And thank you for watching the show.